Very much, Justice, and welcome to the Senate and the Commission on Appointments. My first question is very simple. Is the exercise of the JBC's functions of shortlisting candidates for the judiciary ministerial? Is it merely ministerial, or does it involve judgment and discretion?
Your Honor, it involves judgment and discretion. With respect to the disqualification, there are automatic disqualifications if you have pending cases. But when you meet the criteria,
the Committee on Justice and Judicial and Bar Council of the Commission on Appointments in the first regular session of the 20th Congress is hereby called to order. Mr. Secretary, please administer the oath to Justice Mendoza.
Justice Mendoza, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this proceeding, so help you God?
yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Chair, Justice Mendoza is now under oath.
Justice Mendoza, sir, you may give your opening statement if you have any.
Good morning, Your Honors. I am Jose Catral Mendoza, a retired Justice of the Supreme Court. On October 25, 2017, I was appointed by the President as member of the Judicial and Bar Council, representing the retired justices of the Supreme Court on an ad interim basis. My first term expired on July 9, 2021. On the same day, I was reappointed to the same position. On July 18, 2025, after the expiration of my term this year, I was again reappointed. So this is my third term, if confirmed by your body. As in the case of my first two appointments, my latest reappointment is subject to the confirmation of this body, the Commission on Appointments. Hence my presence here. I believe that I have the necessary qualifications and experience for the position to which I have been reappointed. Primarily, before my original appointment for the JBC in 2017, I served the judiciary for 36 years. 8 years as a research attorney in both the Court of Appeals and later in the Supreme Court. 15 years as a regional trial court judge. 6 years as a Court of Appeals justice, and 7 years and 8 months as a Supreme Court justice. Before that, I was engaged in the practice of law for about 8 years. So I also have the view of an advocate. For the record, I must say that I was trusted and appointed by several presidents. I was first appointed by President Corazon Aquino as RTC Judge of Santa Cruz, Laguna. By President Fidel Ramos as RTC Judge of Quezon City. By President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo as Court of Appeals Justice and as Supreme Court Justice. By President Rodrigo Duterte as JBC member representing the retired justices of the Supreme Court, and by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. when he reappointed me last July 18, 2025. With my experience as a practitioner, judge, justice, and JBC regular member, I believe I can really help the Judicial and Bar Council in its critical task of selecting for nomination the best and the brightest of the candidates for judicial positions. For members of the judiciary, no less than the Constitution provides that a member of the judiciary must be a person of proven competence, integrity, probity, and independence. I believe I can gauge what a good judicial aspirant is based on his academic and professional record, experience, integrity, impartiality, and judicial temperament. As this is my third term, I can report to this body that as of the latest data, there are a total of 2,893 judicial positions nationwide. Of these, 612 positions are currently vacant, reflecting a 21.15% vacancy rate across the judiciary. Included in this number are 100 vacant positions for judges at large. Of the 612 total vacancies, 348 are published vacancies in both organized and unorganized courts. Among these published vacancies, 151 have been processed by the JBC and now have corresponding shortlist submitted to the President, to the Office of the President. This consists of 145 lower court positions, 2 associate justice positions in the Court of Appeals, and 2 associate justice positions in the Sandigan Bayan. These positions are now simply awaiting presidential action. The remaining 197 published vacancies are still being processed by the JBC. Of these, 165 are lower court positions, currently in the applicant vetting stage, with a total of 883 applicants undergoing evaluation. The other 31 positions pertain to vacant Sharia courts, with Office of the Court Administrator recommending for recommendations for opening. Beyond these published vacancies, there are 264 judicial positions that remain unpublished, representing courts that have to be opened for application or nomination. From January to December 2024, the JBC received a total of 2,262 applications for various positions. Of these applicants, 894 were male, while a significantly higher number, 1,368, were female. Meanwhile, among 262 judicial positions appointed during the same period, 108 appointees were male, whereas 154 were female. This appointment distribution further demonstrates that judiciary's commitment to promoting gender balance and empowering more women to serve on the bench, contributing to a more diverse and representative justice system. Thank you very much. That will be my initial statement and report.
Thank you, Mr. Justice. The floor is now open for questioning. There be any? Senator Marcos.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Justice, and welcome to the Senate and the Commission on Appointments. My first question is very simple. Is the exercise of the JBC's functions of shortlisting candidates for the judiciary ministerial? Is it merely ministerial, or does it involve judgment and discretion?
Your Honor, it involves judgment and discretion. With respect to the disqualification, there are automatic disqualifications if you have pending cases. But when you meet the criteria and you're not disqualified, then discretion comes in. There are so many factors to be considered by a member in considering an aspirant. Is not only his bar rating, his academic records are also looked into, his experience as a professional, the honors, the awards he garnered, his reputation also, his integrity,
Thank you.
and his record.
Thank you very much, Justice. In other words, the JBC is not a mere rubber stamp. Is that correct? I mean, its job is not merely to ensure that it ticks off all the requirements or deletes in the case of disqualifications. So otherwise, the Constitution wouldn't require such stringent qualifications for one to become a JBC member. Isn't that correct, Paul? Should have already qualified on the last day of the application. I heard this is the practice for regular applicants for the judiciary, the RTC. Why change it for some people? Why does the JBC keep changing its rules? Does the JBC favor someone? Why qualify an applicant on the very last day of final deliberations? I refer to the case of Attorney Logan, who was only issued an ombudsman clearance on October 6th, the same day the shortlist was released and sent to the office of the president due to 2 pending ombudsman cases. Why were the rules suddenly changed in her favor?
Actually, Your Honor, when we publish the announcement inviting applicants for we invite the public to report, to comment, to endorse or oppose the applications of those listed applicants. Not all submit their oppositions on time. There are those who submit their clearances when they apply. There are those who reserve or they ask for time to submit their clearances. And after that, there are also oppositions, complaints against the applicants. And in our experience, most of the complaints they're not that serious as to disqualify a candidate. So we consider every opposition, we ask them to comment, to comply with the due process requirement of the Constitution. So they are asked to comment. The last day, because of our experience of complainants or oppositors filing their complaints and opposition during the last week or the last few days of the final deliberation, we deem it unfair if we will automatically disqualify them. So we
Justice,
have to study if the matter is very serious or not.
yes,
Because-
Justice, but you made mention of a list of absolute requirements, which contains, among others, a clearance of the ombudsman. Surely that doesn't require an oppositor to file with the JBC. Surely that is of note. Why was Attorney Logan considered, given that the ombudsman clearance was only given on the same day, yesterday, when the
Yeah.
short list was given? The deadline had long passed. Why is the JBC changing its rules to favor certain people?
It's still within the rules, Your Honor. Before the voting, they should, if they can submit a clearance, they can be qualified and can be
Even on the same day po?
same day.
Because they're given to understand that the required documents are supposed to have been submitted in September, as is usual with regular judges in ordinary courts.
Yes. With respect to judges, we have considered it to be the last day because there are so many good judges.
So there's a distinction po.
When
The
they are-
ombudsman is special and regular judges have to comply with the rules.
No, they have the same qualification if they have a
But
pending.
there was a deadline for the requirements to be submitted in September,
Oh.
a deadline that was actually extended repeatedly.
Yes. It is on the last day of we call it the final deliberation. If they can submit a clearance, they can be considered with respect to.
Several dates were given po. In
Yes,
September, I recall.
Yes, Your Honor.
In any case, did you participate, given that you were reappointed twice? Did you participate in the proceedings in the shortlisting of the ombudsman candidates po?
Yes, yes, Your Honor, because my appointment was ad interim.
So, given the two appointments, you in fact participated. So we are very curious about the occurrences with regard to the JBC shortlisting yesterday. It is very clear that the JBC requires that an applicant should have no pending administrative or criminal case before any office, considering that Secretary Boying Remulla was included in the list of nominees, despite having pending cases and issues touching on propriety. Would you agree that such inclusion may cast doubt on your council's adherence to the constitutional requirement of recognized probity and independence?
We were aware of that. Senator Pangilinan was there and Congressman Luistro was there when we considered the first issue of whether a candidate is disqualified or not. So in the case of Secretary Remulla, he was able to submit clearances from the ombudsman. And then
Hello, hello.
we
Welcome to my YouTube channel,
we checked
Bento
the
TV
JBC
1, 2,
rules
3, 4.
and in the JBC rules
Magandang balita po
regarding
sa atin lahat
disqualification,
at magandang
if you have
gabi
a
sa
pending case
Pilipinas.
with the ombudsman,
Pakinggan po natin
you will
guys
be
yung
disqualified. But if there is any other administrative case before any other government agency, it will be subject to the discretion and evaluation of the individual members. It is only, I do not know why the administrative cases of pending before the ombudsman are different from the other agencies, but that is the rule. And
But surely you're aware that the pending cases were not merely administrative, but in fact criminal. And we can hardly say that recognized probity is in fact upheld.
Mr. Roder, that is, we are aware of that, but he was able to obtain a clearance. So,
As a matter of fact, some of these cases arose before Secretary Remulla made his intentions known that he intended to become ombudsman. Is this a person of recognized probity? Also a lifelong politician? Is this a person of recognized independence?
the voting yesterday was in secret, it was confidential. We do not know the members who voted for him and the member who did not vote for him. So may we ask your indulgence on that? We respect the the confidentiality of the JPC proceedings because the Chief Justice Alexis Mundo even asked us to execute an undertaking that everything should be confidential for the protection of the members of the JPC, especially the regular members who are not politicians. They are apolitical.
We are certain that you are aware that in 2012, for the position of Chief Justice, two pending disbarments against then Laila de Lima disqualified her.
Before you answer, Justice, the chair would like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Joel Villanueva.
It's,
Yes, so this occurred in 2012 when she was disqualified
yes.
because of two disbarment cases. I am certain that you are aware that there are disbarment cases filed against Secretary Remulla. First, on the 23rd of September, Attorney Topacio filed. Thereafter, on the 2nd of October, acting Davao City Mayor Baste Duterte also filed a disbarment case. In addition, our chairman, Senator Marcoleta, filed his sworn opposition. But in the short list submitted yesterday to the Office of the President, it still included the name of Secretary Remulla. Why is that so, considering that there are two pending disbarment cases and a sworn opposition?
We considered them as complaints, but in our discussion yesterday, it was considered that last-minute oppositions and complaints were considered as mere oppositions by the JBC.
Are you saying, Justice, that all of these cases against Secretary Remulla are entirely baseless?
No, it's still ongoing, but in the minds of the members,
You admit that they were still ongoing, certainly.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
yes, Your Honor.
You can hardly say that he is qualified. You yourself said if there are pending cases, and
Yes.
you said that they are ongoing. How could you have disregarded them and included him in a short list? You can form your preliminary judgment or opinion on the cases for purposes of JBC proceedings, right?
Yes.
Are we saying that these are baseless? Is it not clear that the case I filed at the Ombudsman was dismissed by the acting Ombudsman Vargas on the sole ground that the Supreme Court would raise prejudicial questions? Certainly, the Ombudsman didn't tackle the merits in any way. Hence, the JBC should have considered it and given it more weight.
Was considered by all the members of the JBC, but we do not know the reasons of each and every member. The JBC.
For your reasons, as a member, how did you just?
He was able to secure a clearance with respect to the criminal cases, and then. With respect to the disbarment, they were considered one and the same act by the body. The members of the JBC come from different interests. I represent the retired justices. One represents the academe, one represents the private sector, and one represents the IBP. The government is represented, the Senate is represented by.
Sir, we're aware of the different sectors represented in the JBC, and we are certain that they're all qualified and
Yeah.
fit. However, given the cases that were pending, what will happen as a former Supreme Court justice if the Supreme Court decides that no prejudicial question exists and that the ombudsman should have resolved the Remulla cases on its merits. Do you think that Secretary Remulla can ever be fair in deciding the cases against himself, now sitting as ombudsman? If he inhibits, do you think that it will allay any notion of partially considering that it is still his underlings who will finally decide? Does that not put us in an untenable position?
Yes, Your Honor, I agree that he has to inhibit himself, but he's in a position to, as the ombudsman, yes, he is in a position to influence the deputies if who will replace him if he inhibits himself. But there's so many factors, and we cannot at this time predict what those factors are. But the human factor is very important. Their background, their sense of justice, like that.
Would not that be the same problem? Is a decision on the two disbarment cases is adverse to Secretary Remulla? How can it be enforced, considering that he is an impeachable officer? Did the JBC not take this into account?
We took this into account, Your Honor. We know that there is a process. With respect to disbarment, sometimes they are directly filed with the IBP, and then it goes to it is referred to the council or the committee in the IBP. And then if they have finding already, it will go to the Board of Governors. And all their findings are recommendatory. It is after the Board of Governors of the IBP, they will recommend to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will be the final arbiter.
Yes, Justice Mendoza, we're aware of the process. Merely that it appears that the JBC did not adequately take into consideration all these issues. We are aware, Mr. Chairman and Justice Mendoza, of the tremendous pressure upon the JBC. However, it's apparent that the JBC subverted its own rules and really performed extraordinary leniency in the case of at least two applicants, by which we're totally perplexed and rather alarmed for its future performance. That's all, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Justice Mendoza.
Thank you, Senator Amy. Any more questions? Congressman Alan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Justice, may I ask for your view on the use of artificial intelligence in the judiciary? To what extent do you believe artificial intelligence may be permissibly used to aid courts?
Personally, Your Honor, I use lately only AI to correct my grammar. That's all. When I research, I try to research on some issues, but I came to the conclusion that at this time, AI is not yet fully developed for me because I was researching on a case of succession, and it provided me with the wrong provision. So I never relied on AI itself. But there are so many uses of AI, and for research, I'm not yet endorsing it. But during one of our interviews, there was a judge who said, he's a judge in La Union, he's a top-notcher. He used AI because the transcript, he asked the AI to summarize it, and the AI summarized it, and according to him, it was very accurate. But we are still we have in the JBC we have digitized it already. Applications are online, subject to submission of the hard copies, because what you have submitted, what an applicant could have submitted in the through online may be not the genuine one. So we also ask them to submit a hard copy for comparison. But AI is still limited. I tried it. It's still not really reliable. But in grammar and style, it can help. Just this.
Thank you, Mr. Justice. I have no more question.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Senator Joel.
Mr. Chair. I don't think this is AI problem. Mr. Chair, just in that particular topic, just one intervention, if I may. Thank you. Hi, Justice. Good morning po. Doon po sa framework on artificial intelligence regulation, don't you think it's very important that we come up of a framework on artificial intelligence by coming up with a law that gives framework for our judiciary, Mr. Chair?
This has embarked on several innovations, foremost of which is the use of AI also. And we have computerized everything in the judiciary. And one of the first to use computers and online is the JBC. If an applicant will apply in the JBC, if he can apply even if he is in Tawi-Tawi or in Batanes through online, through the ORAS, which is an online registration. It's an acronym, ORAS. And it's very successful, and we have tested it. But we do not automatically disqualify at this time because there are some hitches. But we are trying to solve them. We give the benefit of the doubt to the applicants.
I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, if we are on the same page here, but I'm not an expert as well. But looking at the current framework, I don't think the courts are in a position right now without having a framework on artificial intelligence, and that's why I'm very interested about this. We're looking at filing a bill in order to address these issues, Mr. Chairman. But anyway, it's
not yet fully developed, but the Chief Justice wants us to study that. We have an office there called BISO, and they're trying to computerize everything, and also AI framework. The Supreme Court has, the Chief Justice created the committee to study that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Villanueva. Justice, a few questions from the chair.
Yes, Your Honor.
In the previous rules of the Judicial and Bar Council, those with pending cases or pending complaints are automatically disqualified. The case in point is that case of then Senator, now Congresswoman Laila de Lima. Because of her pending disbarment case in 2012, she was automatically disqualified. But soon enough, your rules were revised. And because of that, under Section 5 of your revised rules, paragraph B, those with pending administrative cases or complaints before any court, office, tribunal, or government office, agency, or instrumentality, or before the IBP, or any association, disciplinary committee, or body, when in the determination of the council, the complaints are serious or grave as to affect their fitness for nomination, ay disqualified lamang po. But again, kung madidetermine ng council na yung complaints are serious or grave as to affect their fitness for nomination. Ang ibig pong sabihin nito, Justice, if the council feels that the complaints are not serious or grave enough to affect their fitness or nomination, hindi po madi-disqualify yung applicant. Is that correct, sir?
With respect to disqualifications, there are automatic disqualifications like if you have been pending cases in criminal cases in the courts. And
Yes, Justice.
with
Ang
respect-
sinasabi ko po yung sa
with respect-
Section 5, which
Yes.
says the following are disqualified from being nominated for appointment in any judicial post or the position of ombudsman, deputy ombudsman.
Yes,
Ito pong sinabi ko, pero ang kolatilya po, when in the determination of the council, the complaints are serious or grave. Ibig sabihin po, kung hindi serious at saka hindi grave, hindi po siya madi-disqualify.
po,
That's
sa-
right, sir.
it pertains to the administrative cases po. If it is pending in the ombudsman, an applicant is automatically disqualified. But with respect to the pending administrative cases or complaints before any office, court, tribunal, or any government office, ito po subject to this discretion of each member. Yun ang
Yun nga po ang ibig ko sabihin,
hindi ho,
Justice.
hindi ho automatic.
Yun nga po. So, ibig sabihin nito dahil nag-file po ng disbarment si Mayor Sebastian Duterte,
Yes po.
ibig sabihin po, in the discretion of the council, hindi siya serious or grave enough. Tama po ba?
Ang what I heard yesterday was the argument that it refers the complaint refers to the same act which was in a complaint previously dismissed by the ombudsman or earlier dismissed by the ombudsman. Nag-prevail na reason yesterday. I just cannot disclose the members who gave those reasons, but it prevailed yesterday. Yes, sir.
This representation, Justice, filed a sworn opposition to the application of Secretary Rimulya to the office of the Ombudsman on two grounds. Secretary Rimulya publicly announced that he added restitution as requirement to the Witness Protection Program. That requirement does not exist in the law, but he insisted. That justice, to my mind, clearly indicates or demonstrates the lack of required legal acumen as well as adherence to the standards of probity befitting an ombudsman. Second, the Secretary's affirmation of the bending the law constitutes a violation of the Code of Professional Responsibility and Accountability. These two grounds, Mr. Justice, are not enough for the JBC to consider?
It's like this, we receive your complaint or your opposition against Secretary Remulla. We considered the reasons, but there were two issues yesterday. First was whether or not he is disqualified. And then doon na ako pumasok sa, because he was not disqualified, he can be voted upon, pumasok na ho doon yung consideration of the merits of your complaint. Doon no, he was not able to get a unanimous vote. Pero hindi ko na ho masabi ko sino yung mga votante. But they considered the reasons you gave. Your two reasons were very important. We received them, we read them, and we considered them. But
How did you consider
maintindihan
that?
sana.
How did the council consider the sworn opposition?
Ano yun? Nasa weight na ho yun. Nasa weight. Not sa qualification or disqualification, but on the weight na sa voting ng a considered candidate, nandun na sa weight to yun. The members, majority are appointed by the president. They considered that it is, they voted, the majority voted for him, so they did not give it much weight, you know, or the opposition.
Mr. Justice, one of the overarching principles that guided the creation of the 1987 Constitution is the desire to promote the rule of law, as is stated in our own preamble. Pag sinabi po nating rule of law, this is the guiding post. When somebody affirms that sometimes we can bend the law, you or the JBC took that very lightly, Mr. Justice?
No, Your Honor, we, in the interpretation of the law, we can be strict, or we can be, what do you call that? For example, in the interpretation of the Constitution, if you are a strict one, they call you an originalist. And if you want to adapt to the times, they call you, you are a believer of the living Constitution. I don't know.
We're not interpreting the Constitution, Mr. Justice.
Yes,
I'm asking you whether the rule of law is still the foundation of our Constitution.
it is very much the foundation.
When somebody affirms that the law can be bended, that is inconsistent with the Constitution. Don't you think so?
Yes, I agree with that, but sometimes it depends upon the context of how it is used, the bending of the law, whether it is freely, if they are interpreting it liberally.
Did you know how it was used, Mr. Justice?
Yes,
We were discussing
Yes,
whether
Your
or not restitution
yes, Your Honor.
is a requirement for an applicant to be processed under the Witness Protection Program.
Yes, yes.
And suddenly the Secretary of Justice insisted that one requirement is restitution. It is not there.
Aware of that. Yes.
And somebody suggested that sometimes the law should be bent. That
Yes,
was
sir.
the context, Mr. Justice.
I heard it, Your Honor. I saw it on
And if you hear it from no less than the Secretary of Justice, abrogating all the cornerstones of our belief in ourselves, in our Constitution, then you still include him as an applicant to the Ombudsman. Somebody who will preside over the lives, the properties and liberties of every citizen of this country. You take light of that. The JBC will take light of that, Mr. Justice.
the majority considered it as slight.
So the majority
The majority.
took light of the opposition of a senator of this republic, Mr. Justice.
That is a fact, Your Honor.
And 6 of them based on their discretion, the opposition is not worth it. Is that it, Mr. Justice?
There were six yes, excluding the secretary himself, because he is also a member of the Judicial and Bar Council.
Because of his inclusion in the short list, Mr. Justice, will you favor amending further your rules
Yes, Your Honor. We
that
have-
would give a chance that all prospective nominees or applicant to the ombudsman should already be subjected not to the JBC, but the Commission on Appointments?
It's up to you, Your Honor.
It's only a suggestion, Mr. Justice.
But with respect,
Just thinking aloud, Mr. Justice.
yes, Your Honor. With respect to the JBC, we have set tomorrow up to Friday to review and amend the internal rules of the JBC, considering past incidents. And we are inviting the public to submit their recommendations. So it will be a 3-day workshop to amend the internal rules of the Judicial and Bar Council.
What would you think of the public thinking that somebody who affirmed that sometimes we should bend the law has become the ombudsman of this republic?
I do not have time really to read the social media, but my position is different. I am a believer of the rule of law. I was a justice for several years at a regional trial court. When I was a regional trial court, I adhered to precedents. Also, when I was a justice in the Court of Appeals, I adhered to the precedents. When I was in the Supreme Court, whenever I make a ruling, I was very aware that our decisions will be considered as precedents by those following us. So that's my experience being in the judiciary. That's why I believe in the rule of law.
Thank you, Mr. Justice. Any more questions from the floor?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Justice.
Morning.
The ombudsman position has been vacant since July 27, 2025, and following the retirement of Samuel Martires, with JBC's public interviews concluding on September 2. But the deliberations are repeatedly rescheduled due to composition changes, risking non-compliance with the constitutional mandate of the 90-day appointment deadline, which ends this month, and eroding the public trust amid ongoing corruption probe. Now, my question, Justice, is that the ombudsman vacancy has lingered beyond the initial post-retirement period, with public interviews that concludes last month. Now, the deliberation was almost delayed, and how might such timelines undermine public trust in the judiciary? And in your own view, what procedural reforms should the JBC implement to ensure compliance with the 90-day appointment rule under the Constitution?
In every case, like the Supreme Court Justice, the Constitution provides that the appointment should be within the 90-day period from vacancy. If there was one extension, it was because there was a reorganization in the Senate, and there was a change in the representative of the Senate to the JBC. First, it was Senator Cayetano, and he was replaced by Senator Pangilinan. We have to give Senator Pangilinan time to study what has been happening, because yesterday he appeared for the first time and he voted for the first time. But before that, we gave him all the materials to study because he would be voting. It is the turn of the Senate now. With respect to the rules, Congressman Luistro was there. She participated. She also interviewed the candidates, although only one voted for the ombudsman, because it is now the turn of the senator. But we gave this Senator Pangilinan time to study the candidates. So I think it was reasonable, because there was a change, I think, about, and then it was, I think, originally September 29, because there was, or 19, there was a sudden change. And there was a sudden change of representative. We just wanted Senator Pangilinan to study the matter, because he will vote, and he did vote yesterday.
And the 90-day period, Mr. Justice, would end on what day of this month?
Senator, Ombudsman Martires retired. His term expired July 27. So the president has until October 25 to appoint.
Okay. Now,
We were very aware of that. That's why we could not extend anymore, because there's so many complaints we have to study. We have very limited time because of the constitutional constraints. That also goes through with respect to the Supreme Court applicants, 90 days only. And there's so many complaints. We have limited time, because we have some complaints. You need investigators out there to double check, because it is also unfair for the applicants to be automatically disqualified because of a complaint. We must check the veracity of the complaints also.
with regard to the Supreme Court applicants, under Article 2, Section 2 of the clause of the U.S. Constitution, the Supreme Court justices are nominated by the President.
Yes.
And confirmed by the Senate by a majority vote or simple majority of the Senate, emphasizing legislative scrutiny, but often criticized for partisanship and delays, which average of at least 70 days. This contrasts with the Philippine JBC, which is insulated vetting, prompting debates on balancing executive power with checks. Now, the U.S. Supreme Court appointment process involves a presidential nomination, followed by, as I mentioned earlier, the Senate vote, which is a simple majority. What are your thoughts on this model, strengths and weaknesses compared to the Philippine system, particularly in balancing executive decision or discretion with checks against politicization? Mr. Justice.
Your Honor, before the 1987 Constitution, the Philippines had almost a similar system. First, there will be the president will name a nominee, and then he will be subjected to, by his appointment will be considered for confirmation by the Commission on Appointments, consisting of the members of the lower house and the upper house. In the Supreme Court in the United States, as you have mentioned, it is only by the Senate by a majority. I think And in the 87 Constitution, maybe it was Justice Palma who was a member, he introduced this concept, judicial, it should be, the candidate should be vetted first by the Judicial and Bar Council and then confirmed by the Commission on Appointments. And then appointed by the President, then but the members are confirmed by, the appointments of the members are confirmed by the Commission on Appointments.
This,
I think there is a need. There are pros and cons of those different procedures. I think they have pluses and minuses, but there is a need to study, considering also the Philippine culture, our politics, the people. We are different from the United States. We can adapt it if it will only be the Senate minus the House of Representatives. My personal view is that the House of Representatives should also be represented, either before or after.
so considering that this is a very significant decision, as Supreme Court justices have a lasting impact on the society, would you recommend that we should revert back to the old rule wherein their appointments must be subjected to the confirmation of the Commission on Appointments, with the Senate and House contingent being involved?
Did not get the first part, sir.
Would you consider reverting back to the old rule that Supreme Court appointments will be subject to the confirmation of the Commission on Appointments?
Supreme Court. There's nothing wrong with that, because the members of Congress, whether they're senators or representatives, they have different, they can bring their own experience and thoughts in vetting an applicant for the Supreme Court.
Thank you, Mr. Justice. Now, on a lighter note, kayo ho ay dating seminarista.
Yes po.
Pareho tayo. Pero you penned 2 landmark cases upholding the separation of church and state.
Yes po.
Can you share with us kung ano tong dalawang Supreme Court decision, landmark case that upholds the separation of church and state?
Actually, yung sa the first one is the RH law, sir. Yung RH, I declared that the RH law is not unconstitutional. But there are provisions there which I recommended to be, because as a ponente, you just recommend, subject pa ho yan ng mga agreement, disagreement ng inyong kasamahan. I recommended that they be, because, for example, sa health, if you do not agree with the family planning, you'll be terminated. And that will be against your religious belief, because you do not believe in abortion, you will be terminated. And it was my view at that time, and even now, that he should not be terminated for his religious belief. Ganun no.
The other case that you penned?
The other case is somebody complained that the Hall of Justice in Quezon City is being turned into because the complaint was that it was favoring the Catholic Church and that it should be forever banned, the holding of masses in Quezon City Hall. We denied the petition because we said that providing religious images there that constitute the conversion of the Hall of Justice into a church. At saka ho yung putting images, religious images there, adding religious images there that constitute the conversion of the Hall of Justice into a church. At saka ho yung putting images, religious images there are temporary. After the Mass, those organizers should hide those icons and images from the public view. And any sect or religion can hold the same services. Because in our country, in the preamble of the Constitution, we believe in our Supreme God. You can see that in our preamble. Di ko lang memoryado ngayon.
We, the Filipino people, imploring the aid of the Almighty God. Thank you, Mr. Justice. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No further questions.
Chairman.
Mhm.
Senator Joel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I actually have a couple of questions here with me, but I can forgo some of it if you are in a hurry, Mr. Chairman. But there's one topic and issue that I'd like to raise. But before that, let me commend our justice for stating the fact that in our preamble we believe in Almighty God. And so, as mentioned by our Deputy Majority Leader, in reciting the preamble of our Constitution with the sovereign Filipino people imploring the aid of the Almighty God. And obviously, we don't need to ask that question who that God is. But Mr. Chairman, it has been my lifelong advocacy in raising the issue of contract of service, job orders in government agencies and departments. In fact, Mr. Chairman, since I became a member of the Senate, we have been scrutinizing the list of job orders and contract of service in government, while when this representation was the chairperson of the Senate Committee on Labor, we passed the ending ENDO bill. Obviously, because we wanted to address the issue of the evils of end of contract. But it is very hard to advocate that initiative because the government is actually the #1 violator of ending ENDO. I started, Mr. Chairman, there are only about 650,000 job orders, contract of service in government offices. And now it's ballooned to about 900,000. And looking at the judiciary, there are about 12,039 unfilled positions in judiciary, 95.6% in the Supreme Court and lower courts. And this is a factor in the delay of case disposition. I would believe so, and contribute to the 637,919 pending cases in 2024. Now, the judiciary's backlog continues to grow, with pending cases rising by 3.5% in 2024. And as I mentioned earlier, 12,039 unfilled positions nationwide, mostly in lower courts, Your Honor. May we know from our nominee, how can the Judicial and Bar Council help in addressing this chronic manpower gap? Would the nominee Justice Mendoza support perhaps streamlining JBC vetting procedures, or perhaps recalibrating qualification standards to accelerate the appointment of judges, of course, without compromising integrity, Your Honor?
Your Honor, before, we process applications by regions. We thought by regions, we can easily dispose of we can fill up the vacancies. Now we have resorted under the leadership of Chief Justice Esmundo. We opened them simultaneously nationwide, from Apari to Hulo to Tawi-Tawi. We simultaneously open, as if there are vacancies, we open them upon recommendation of the court administrator. But there are some newly created courts we just cannot open for application because there are no infrastructures. Courts are created, but there are no automatic appropriations. We have no courtrooms, and we do not have money for the personnel. If you appoint a judge, you have to appoint also a clerk of court, a sheriff, a stenographer, and so forth, and utilities, a process server. You have to have money for them. And these infrastructures, we have several courts. There are about 80.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, Justice, but I am talking about 12,039 unfilled positions.
Yes.
Does it mean that there's no funding available for that? Because that's unfilled.
No, the court administrator they are constantly processing all the applications. But there are some courts which are not created. For example, even the Sharia courts, we have a problem. There are Sharia courts in the Barm area, and there are several Muslims outside the Barm area. And then we lack also candidates. For example, we require in the Sharia courts that they be members of the bar. They've already passed the Sharia bar, but most are not members of the Philippine bar. And it is required that they be members of the Philippine bar. There is that this be addressed. It's still pending. So we cannot immediately fill up the Sharia courts. But we have been informed by Acting Chief Justice Leonen yesterday that they will come up with guidelines so we can open the Sharia courts. But with respect to the regular courts, there is a need to build the infrastructures.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, I really am not trying to ask questions on the Sharia courts and the building of infrastructures, etc., Mr. Chairman. I am more concerned of the unfilled positions, which I believe is already funded, Mr. Chairman. So just to put on record, may we know if the nominee is supporting perhaps the streamlining of JBC vetting procedures, or perhaps, again, recalibrating qualification standards to somehow accelerate the appointment of judges. Again, emphasizing without compromising the integrity of the nominees, Mr. Chair.
I am for that, Your Honor.
Thank
We
you.
will expedite it and without sacrificing integrity. And we are doing that. We're publishing the names and the vacant positions, the vacant positions, I mean, and the names like that.
Thank you, because I think it's music to the ears of the employees, present employees of the judiciary, looking at the 12,039 unfilled positions. Now, going back to what you mentioned about Sharia courts, etc., what is your position with regard to the reviewing of BP 129, which this representation believe is already outdated, and the need to integrate Sharia justice system? If you look at the geography of our country and in the situation right now, on how we'll be more responsive in reviewing BP 129, Your Honor.
We are aware of that, Your Honor. There's so many Muslims outside the bar, even especially in Taguig, in Tuguegarao, in Batangas, everywhere. There are several Muslims, and the courts, Sharia court should be established there.
Thank you. And one last thing, what's your position in revising our penal code, yung decriminalizing yung mga karakrus? Mr. Justice, kawawa naman hanggang ngayon.
Personal position, no?
Mhm.
It's still in the law books, but upon dapat nga lighter ang penalty. Very, very light.
Very, very light, or i-decriminalize na lang, karakrus?
Decriminalize pwede rin.
Anyway, Mr. Chairman,
Because we have our casinos and they can,
and we can't even stop online gambling,
yes.
Your Honor. Mr. Chairman, I will finish my interpellations and thank our good Justice Mendoza. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Joel. Last question from the chair, Justice.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yun pong mga affiliations like fraternity, sorority, where the applicants belong to, di ba? Paano po kaya, do you have some suggestions? Baka sakaling merong mandatory inhibition, because alam po ninyo pagka kasama sila sa, malakas po ang influensya talaga ng mga affiliations. I think that's an open secret. And considering that we are about to maybe in a few days more, the President will appoint the Ombudsman. Sana yung influence ng affiliation hindi naman strong. Paano ang inyong, what is your view on this, Mr.
In my experience, so at the present time, classmates in the ground for mandatory inhibitions, pati brotherhood in the fraternity, hindi rin automatic ang inhibition, hindi rin mandatory. On also membership in, for example, Rotary, Lions, hindi rin automatic. So it depends. Kung minsan, yung brothers ang naglalaban sa court. But they should be reviewed. Baka at this time, pwede.
Thank you for the answer, Mr. Justice. Any more questions from the floor? If there are no more inquiries and clarifications, Senator Amy.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Senator Marcoleta and Justice Mendoza. I am, however, deeply disturbed, nay, alarmed by the responses of Justice Mendoza to the questions of the chair, of Congressman Garbin, of Senator Villanueva, and those of myself, casting a doubt on indeed the probity and independence of the Judicial Bar Council. At this juncture, therefore, I am unable, without further clarification and more responsive and adequate answers from the justice, to support the appointment of Justice Mendoza. I'm sorry po.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask for a minute suspension? Yes, Chair.
Session suspended.